Hello and welcome to an all-new episode of Anime Brain Freeze. We are your post-apocalyptic hosts.
I am John.
And I'm CC, and this is the show where we review all the anime series from the previous season we did and didn't watch start to finish. So since John graciously gave us 2 or rather 3 reviews last episode, it's his turn to sit back, relax, and only talk about one series today. And that series is Kino's Journey, the new adaptation of the popular light novel. And for me, it's time to step up my game, so I will kick off the show with a review of Jūni Taisen Zodiac War and finish up this episode by talking about Girl's Last Tour. So, kind of a mirror version of the previous episode, I guess. So, yeah. Anyway, I hope you'll enjoy, so stay tuned, we'll be right back. Battle Royale seem to have a bit of a revival right now. Most recently in the form of, for example, the Hunger Games novels and movies, TV series like The 100, and in the video game sector with PlayerUnknown Battleground and and the corresponding mode in Fortnite.
I'd like to apologize, I have my opinions on PUBG, but move on.
Yes, who doesn't? Anyway, there are probably many more of those coming, since that game was such a giant success, so there's probably developers falling over themselves trying to build Battleground modes into their coming games, so yeah.
Yeah, well, you know, MOBA is old hat. Now it's about that Battlegrounds, baby.
Yeah, it's probably only going to be those 2 first games who will be able to sustain themselves on, that idea alone. So, yeah, have fun losing money, guys. Anyway, we also had some anime and manga series playing in that particular ballpark as well over the years. Of course, there is the famous novel by Kushun Takami with the actual name Battle Royale, which was adapted not only into 2 live-action movies, which I've seen the first one of, but also a manga series, which I haven't read. There was Batum, a manga series that also got a 12-episode anime adaptation. I think I watched like 1 episode of that, decided it looked like crap, and didn't continue. So
yeah, I saw the name thrown around, but I didn't actually know anything about it, so now I know.
Yeah, well, it looked trashy, but, just judging from the first episode. And, of course, you could also file series like the Fate franchise, Guns, Future Diary, or even Danganronpa, which also got several anime adaptations at this point into that genre, at least to some extent. Oh, yeah, Killing Bites. Cannot fail to mention that show in every of our episodes. But that also is, it's running right now, and at least in the current arc in the anime is adhering to the Battle Royale formula or format. So yeah, in its most strict definition though, Battle Royale is probably characterized by, giving us a cast of varied characters that get thrown into a somewhat closed-off environment that for one reason or another they can't easily escape from. Sometimes this is due to them being the playthings of a mad society, this being the case in the original Battle Royale and Danganronpa. Sometimes, like for example, in the Hunger Games, this aspect is combined with the protagonist hoping for a certain prize or goal promised to them by the previously mentioned mad leaders of society, be it a lot of money, better standing for their peers, or simply freedom. And sometimes it's just a magic, all-fulfilling wish MacGuffin like in the Fate franchise. Then they have to face off against each other, either with weapons they can, bring along, have to acquire, or are supplied with by an outside party, so you can Hunger Games or Battle Royale, or with their wits, like in Danganronpa. So, the most captivating aspect of a Battle Royale themed story is following a well-defined, sympathetic main protagonist or set of characters, while the story always keeps you guessing who's the next one to die. Because at least none of the side characters tend to be safe in those tales. Would you disagree, John? I mean, you are a fan of the Danganronpa series, like.
Yeah, coming off of Danganronpa, yes. No one is safe, ever.
On the surface level, Jūni Taisen Zodiac War, the first show on the docket today, which is an adaptation of the light novel by the same name, written by Nishio Ishin, is the perfect distillation of the Battle Royale formula. Ishin, by the way, is probably most well known for being the creator of the Monogatari series, which I haven't seen a single entry of. There are a lot of anime series for the Monogatari series. I haven't seen a single one of them. You, John?
I have a few friends who have religiously been watching it from the beginning, and every time I sort of think about it, I'm like, there's a huge barrier to entry because there's so much, and I just end up pushing it further away. Maybe someday I'll think about it, but today's not that day.
Yeah, Monogatari seems to have its fans, but this seems like Ishin wanted to try his hands at something different. So in Jūni Taisen we have 12 characters, all themed after the animals in the Chinese zodiac, facing off against each other. The battleground, so to speak, is an empty, closed-off city. The 12 characters are warriors and fighters, all specialists in their respective fields. For example, we got Tiger, who is a martial arts prodigy, Ox, who is the best sword fighter in the world, Sheep is an expert on explosives, and so on. Everyone wears a costume themed after their respective animal, which makes them very distinctive and interesting looking, and also often reflects their kind of fighting style a bit. And there are some really neat designs in this show. For example, Ox looks a bit like a Spanish torero with ox horns on his head. There is Tiger, who wears a skimpy, tiger bikini costume. What you would expect, I guess. Mm-hmm. Red, who has this sleek, high-tech battle suit. And then there is, of course, everyone's favorite Rabbit, who is this muscular dude in drag and heels. He has black and red eyes, is equipped with 2 giant hatchets, and is a necromancer. He's also scary as fuck. So yeah, it's a cast of colorful characters, check. As for motivation, they are all taking part in this giant fight to the death that seems to occur on a regular basis. At least there seems to have been generations of fighters before this, and events like this before this Zodiac War, and there are even characters in there that have participated multiple times apparently, or who have won before, or are from families that have won in this contest before. So yeah, this seems to this contest, this Zodiac War seems to have a storied history in this world, a bit like Rollerball maybe, or Running Man, although there is not really a big audience witnessing this. The characters participating in this expect to stand as the final survivor and to get their biggest wish fulfilled, which doesn't seem to be restricted to wealth and power. At least it's not really specified. Although since this tournament seems to be sponsored by the most wealthy people in the world who can bet on the different characters and are also the only spectators, this is probably what it comes down to in the end. So yeah, clear motivation that can be expanded upon for each individual character, also check. Now, like I said, on the surface, this all seems nice and good. 12 warriors fighting to the death against each other. Who comes out on top? Who do we root for? But this is where the problems of the show already begin. I found it very hard to latch onto a character in this show. 2 reasons for that. First, we only learn enough about a few select characters to empathize with them. Second, some of the cast members are so repulsive that it's hard to give a damn about them. And weirdly enough, the show decides to spend 2 whole fucking episodes on 2 of the lamest, most uninteresting and repulsive characters in the show. And that in a series where we get a very, very limited time for character development for each character, because there is 12 episodes. And, we got 12 characters, and that means we will lose at least 1 cast member in every episode. So wasting what little time you have on the uninspired background story for 2 of the worst members of the cast is a really poor choice. I have no idea who signed up on that, if that was already in the light novel or a weird directional choice, but it doesn't do the show any favors. Speaking about losing cast members, as mentioned before, there is pretty much 1 character death in every episode. Now, that can still be a fun formula if you can't see coming who is next, and if the characters are either developed well enough to make you care about their demise, or the fights and death scenes are exciting and dramatic enough to pull you into the action. Sadly, again, The show rarely manages to pull off either. The probably biggest flaw in the Zodiac setup is that the show adheres way too close to its blueprint. Basically, if you know the order of the Chinese Zodiac for some reason, guess what? You already know in what order the characters will die. Because the show follows it precisely.
Oops.
So, to get maybe even a sliver of surprise and enjoyment out of the show, if you don't know the order of the Zodiac, don't look it up before watching this. At all. You know, any surprise will be completely ruined. But even if you don't, the character deaths are way too predictable most of the time. The characters who gets his or her background story in the episode dies in that episode most of the time.
Don't you love death flags? Plain as day death flags.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. The show rarely strays from that formula. You know, there are some outliers here and there, but it's really, most of the time, that's what happens. You get a background story and a character, and you know, okay, that character is gone at the end of this episode, and that's what happens. Akame ga Kill had the same problem for most of its runtime, which, you know, I enjoyed that show, but that was also a big problem for me because it ruined the surprise. Also, I would say, like, that show, it's less excusable for that show because it had a longer runtime, so you could have gotten the character background stories out of the way earlier and then kill the characters off later when they're more well established. I'm willing to give Zodiac War a bit of leeway because it has only 12 episodes, but then again, I wonder if they shouldn't just have given it like double, you know, the runtime to establish some of the characters and background story earlier and then maybe kill him off in a not so predictable order here too. So yeah, that was disappointing. Also, at a certain point, it's just very easy to deduce who will be the winner of this tournament by character traits and design alone. I didn't know anything about the Order of the Zodiac and had the winner pegged pretty much from the very beginning just because of the way their character was designed and behaved in the show and what they said and what they did and everything. So yeah, it's all way too predictable, and that is a big problem. One of the main draws, like I said, of a Battle Royale is not really knowing who of the side characters bites the dust next and the reasons for it. And the show does just not a good job at keeping you guessing. Now, all of that still wouldn't be so bad if the characters were well developed. I already talked about how it's hard to latch onto some of the characters, but there are a few sympathetic characters that you want to root for in the story nonetheless. The problem is, the moment you have learned enough about them to really care, they usually almost immediately are killed off. And here's the next problem. Not really in a spectacular or exciting way. A lot of the death scenes in the show are quick, dirty, out of nowhere, and unspectacular. Which, you know, okay, fits in a real-world context, I guess, because that's what death usually is like, but it doesn't make for an exciting viewing experience whatsoever. It's like, you see a fight, you think, oh, there's going to be some build-up, it's going to be a wild clash, and suddenly, out of nowhere, a character is killed, and you just, okay, I would be surprised, but, you know, there's no build-up to that, and there's no gravitas to that. The character just dies, and then it's over. It's like that character doesn't really matter anymore. And it's just, yeah, it's that all of that felt super flat for me. Now, the fights in the show are actually pretty cool at times, albeit sometimes way too short. But we get some neat fighting choreography, some cool camera work, sometimes even pretty great CG that works surprisingly well, and is comparable to the stuff I mentioned before in Orange stuff and in, you know, the One Piece and Dragon Ball movies. The show is animated by Graphinica, who have done a lot of in-between and second key animation, but have also done the animation production on the CG anime movie Expelled from Paradise, written by Gen Urobuchi, which I liked a lot, believe it or not. I don't know if you've seen that one.
I keep meaning to, and I keep putting it off.
Yeah, I'd recommend it. I mean, it's still, you know, it's CG anime with all the trappings that entails, but it's good. It's good CG anime, and it's written, you know, by one of the best writers in the biz, in my opinion, so there you go. Jūni Taisen is directed by Naoto Hosoda, who is also the director for the previously mentioned Future Diary and also The Devil is a Part-Timer, a show we both enjoyed, I think, a lot. Yeah. And yeah, action direction-wise, this show looks pretty good most of the time. The animation quality is not very consistent, though, and it drops in some of the fights and is especially janky in certain quieter dialogue-driven scenes, which takes, again, away from some of the things the characters say and, makes you... it just pulls you out of the show at times. But most of the important fights look good. There's some interesting choreography stuff in there. Can't really complain that much there. Whether you will get anything out of the show depends on if you can pull enough enjoyment out of some cool fights, neat designs, and pretty good music by Go Shina, who worked on Dimension W, many of the Tales and God Eater games, and their respective anime series.
That's cool.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the soundtrack of that show. There is one especially great theme that gets played when, the fight ramps up. And, a dramatic encounter is about to happen. So that's cool. I just wish the stuff happening on screen at certain times would, reflect the dramatic tone of the music more. Yeah. And the show tries to say some meaningful things about war and the human condition, but most of that stuff falls flat in my opinion, especially since the most interesting characters in the show just don't get enough screen time. I mean, I don't have to learn something substantial about every character. Rabbit, for example, is, he's just a demonic force of nature that is scarier exactly because you know so little about him. But if you give me some interesting characterization for one of the characters, please let me spend some time with them afterwards so that I can engage and, more interested into what they have to say before killing them off. And Jūni Taisen, just didn't bother to do that. Yeah, otherwise there is just no motivation to get emotionally invested in any of their stories, and that's what happened most of the time in this show. It's just like, okay, we have a character that could be interesting, has a semi-interesting background, has some interesting things to say, and then we got some ideologies clashing against each other, and then one of the characters dies, and that's that. And we probably saw that death coming beforehand, so yeah, nothing is left. And yeah, there's not really any interesting statement or substantial statement being made by the end of the show either. It all feels kind of like, I don't know, it's not well thought out and, just a weird writing exercise. So yeah, Jūni Taisen Zodiac War, pretty solid setup for a Battle Royale story, really bad execution with lots of wasted screen time and potential, and really nothing that interesting to say. In my opinion, you can skip this one.
So, like we were saying earlier, getting up on the docket today is Kino's Journey of the Beautiful World, which is this past year's 2017, I guess you could call it a reboot of Kino's Journey. Have you watched the original show?
No, I've heard good things about it, but I never went and checked it out. Probably because also the production values are supposed to be not that great for that show, and maybe that's what deterred me from checking it out. I don't know.
I mean, I had heard that it was a pretty good, version of its story as well. This one is, this leaves me with a lot of questions and not good ones, or about the plot or the characterization. Not questions that matter. They leave me with questions about the production itself.
Oh boy.
So what's the brief overview? Kino is this girl who, I should have said this back when we did the preview segment for this, because I didn't realize Kino was a girl. That's apparently more heavily, number one, it's more heavily talked about in the original series, and it comes up as a point later on in this current series. So there we go. That's me fact-checking myself in not real time. Kino is this girl who loves traveling. Nothing fills her heart with joy like exploring, the wondrous world around her and the fascinating ways people live. Kino, travels around on this sentient motor rad, which, is just a motorcycle.
Yes. It's German for motorcycle. So there you go.
I'm not as much of a linguist as I hoped.
It's fine.
This motorcycle's name is Hermes, and like I said, it's a sentient motorcycle that can speak with her. Sort of caught me off guard at first because it just, not knowing anything about the original show, going in, oh, her bike can talk.
Yeah,
all right.
That could be cool, like the anime version of Knight Rider. I don't know.
It doesn't ever really feel that way, though.
What a shame.
Hermes gives Kino emotional support on their journey and, talks with her through their hardships and whatnot. And together they travel the vast countryside and they go from one nation to another. But Kino's rule is to never stay in one country for more than 3 days because she wants to see, as much as she can. Okay. That's the conceit of the story is interesting. As they, encounter new people and learn the rules of the different countries that they go to, they find more and more about their own values and virtues. But let's be real and talk about this for a minute. This show, I feel like, has a serious identity issue.
Mm-hmm.
And you jumped out in 2 or 3 episodes?
2.
2.
That's when I checked out 2 episodes, decided, maybe I'll get back to it later. And then I heard a lot of bad things about this adaptation, like from people who enjoyed the first show. He really harped on it, and I was like, okay, maybe maybe I should check out the old show after all. But yeah, it sounded not good.
I feel like there are the makings of an interesting show in this. And apparently that is, more than just a feeling because, we keep saying what everyone has said about the previous series.
Mm-hmm.
So what happened here? Well, it just is kind of boring and uninteresting, to be point blank about it. The idea of going, and seeing these different civilizations, that's, again, like I said, that's a cool idea to start off from, but it doesn't really seem like Kino takes much away from her stay in each country. In this, it seems like it's intended to be a story of self-growth and discovery of, both yourself and the world around you, and it feels like it consistently misses that mark. And there's also some, I don't know if I call it pacing problems, but sometimes, you're expected to believe that, she spends 3 days in each place. Fine. Sometimes they go way overboard in details on one place, and then they just completely gloss over other things. And I can't think of the right word for it either, but like I said, the self-discovery and journey, parts of this show are only there, they're hanging on by a thread. I feel like the director, Tomohisa Taguchi, wanted to make this like an action show or something, because there's these bursts of action. It's like, where did this come from?
So they feel really misplaced.
They feel incredibly misplaced.
I've seen the really, probably one of the standouts in that regard is a scene with I don't know, where Kino shoots sheep or something, and it's this dramatic shot of fucking sheep exploding, or I don't know. It's really ridiculous.
We'll get there.
Okay.
We'll get there. Because they, try to play off, the world is beautiful, and yet it's not, because there's always something like, oh, in this town, it's...
Are you saying it's a beautiful yet ugly world?
Yes. For our next review. I don't know if the show is difficult to talk about, but it's difficult to really get a grasp of what they were trying to go for. Because in the first town, kingdom, country, whatever, city, place, you want to call it.
All of those things.
They don't really seem too consistent on the size and the, construction of each area there. Because in the first one, it's like, oh, killing is permitted, except, if you do that, you're going to get, fucked up, so don't do it. Like, okay, if you're permitted to kill, but you're not, and then there's like this one kingdom where, we're having you enter here, but we're having a big battle royale, and it's like this ends up being this huge coup against the leader of the country, and the son like goes away and starts on his own journey, and they spend maybe like one episode on him, and then conveniently forget about him after that, because what's character development?
Yeah, sounds a bit like a patchwork or something that doesn't really fit well together.
That's a really great word. Thank you. Because I wouldn't have been able to pull that out of my own head. Yeah, patchwork suits the construction of this show very well, because it's just so unevenly paced. No one, like even Kino herself, they go into her backstory like a little bit once, and beyond that, it's like there's not a lot of interesting character development. I felt really bored by this show.
That's a shame.
And why I watched it from beginning to end, I don't know. You had the right idea getting out in the second episode.
So not even the misplaced action scenes are exciting?
They're well animated.
Okay.
That's pretty much the only part of the show that's really well animated.
I was about to say, when I watched the first episode, especially the scenes where Kino's riding Hermes,
God,
really janky. The CG is really bad.
The CG model they use for that, oh my God. From a distance, fine. Up close, no. And the show, goes out of its way to avoid teaching these, meaningful life lessons. And it's like, were you hoping to teach your audience something with this show? Because you didn't do it.
Is it like maybe a case of, okay, we got these semi-philosophical ideas, that are brought up, and that you are supposed to make your own mind up about, or come to your own opinion about what is this society supposed to mean, or what is the...
Hey, did you know? Killing is bad. Being a despot is bad. War is bad. Fucking...
Yeah, so it feels more like blunt force trauma than anything, or nothing at all, like either one of those.
Yes.
Okay, that's a shame. I mean, it just from the concept alone, it seems interesting to just put up a lot of different ideas of alternative societies, and even if it's got this patchwork nature to it, and these many different pastiche of different ideas and different ideologies and different societies that don't quite exactly work like ours. If there's a strong underlying theme there that connects everything, that, even if the other stuff seems fragmented, that could work. But it sounds like...
But there's not.
Yeah, there's nothing that really holds it together and gives it an interesting through line.
So let's go back a bit. I talked about the director Tomohisa Taguchi, who's directed stuff like the second and fourth Persona 3 movies, Persona 4 Golden, and Twin Star Exorcists. I mean, I think we have our opinions about Twin Star Exorcists. But...
Oh, yeah. I mean, I never talked about the series. I wanted to finish it to the end. But even for me, Mr. Shonen Action fanboy, that just was too fucking rote and generic and bad, and focusing on the worst, for me at least, worst aspects of shonen, where it's like, hey, do you like watching your characters being fucking teenagers and yelling at each other for most of the time, and misunderstandings? Oh, she thinks he's a perv and hits him in the face. Kill me!
I think I got 2 or 3 episodes in, and I was like, I see exactly where this show is going. See you later.
And I mean, it got better because there's a time jump in that show, and the characters, get more mature and, have lived together at some point. And it was like, okay, they could have done something really interesting with that. Characters being forced to live together and, having to know each other and learn to like each other maybe, and having to learn to fight together and everything like that. That's kind of an unusual setting and everything. And, you could have done something with that, but they just spent way too many episodes on this really, really bad shonen formula that is so generic and so worn out and so annoying. And yeah, at the point where the show could have gotten really interesting, where they get this like surrogate daughter and everything, and okay, maybe that was filler, I'm not sure. But yeah, at that point I was like already so tired of this show that I just couldn't finish it. That's a shame, I guess. But, there will always be a new show and probably a lot better ones in the future. So there you go. That's my 2 cents on fucking Twin Star Exorcists. And now let's never talk about this show again.
And until the next time.
Yes.
I mean, a lot of those points definitely hit home with this show as well. But the writer of the show is Yuki Sugawara, and they have worked on stuff like The Idolmaster Side M, Overlord, Asterisk War, Irregular at Magic High School.
Not a good track record. I mean, I like Overlord, but...
Yeah. Nanana's Buried Treasure, Recreators, Sword Art Online in the first series. But I mean, there's good work buried in there, which is.
And I mean, we have to say, screenplay writer, right? I mean, the main writer is the one for the light novel. Yeah,
the original writer, which I should mention before we move on, was Keiichi Shigesawa, who's done some other stuff, like some stories called Allison and Lilia, and Lilia and Trace Kushranada.
I guess.
Good question. I don't know. I'm sorry. Every time if I see a character named Trace, I'm just going to immediately be like Gundam Wing.
But yeah, it sounds like I was saying the story is more by the original creator, but I heard a lot of people like those light novels. So this seems like you've stated before. This seems to be just a bad adaptation, both in terms of direction and in terms of adaptive screenplay writing. Mm-hmm. I wonder what's worse, like what's more to blame here. Since I haven't read the original light novels, I can't say. But this echoes the feeling of a lot of people who apparently read at least some of the light novels and watched both shows. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the animation was done by Lerch. It was Lerch. Get right. It was a German name.
Yeah, I don't remember if it was a tree or the bird. There's written slightly differently, and I don't know which is what, or which was written, or how the name of that studio is written. So there you go. It's either a tree or a bird. There you go.
But yeah, they have worked on stuff like Assassination Classroom, Carnival Phantasm, Hakume and Mikochi, Monster Musume, Unbreakable Machine Doll, which I think is another show that is a hot point of contention. But
is it?
I mean, I enjoyed it, but I guess a lot of people are like, "Oh, it's garbage." I'm like, I don't know. I don't know anything about the original, but I thought it was okay. But what are they best known for? They're basically the Danganronpa studio. Hey, we brought it full circle.
There we go.
But yeah, I mean, I don't understand why the animation quality of the show was as dodgy as it was, though, man. Because, obviously they have proven they can do good work, but,
maybe the show got a lower budget than it needed.
That could be. It's probably one of those we'll know in 10 or 15 years sort of situations.
Maybe.
Before I give my final verdict and we move on, let's go back to a point you brought up earlier. What the hell was with that sheep episode?
Okay. I haven't seen it. I don't know. I've only seen the fucking GIF.
It's so... What? So I guess there are these sheep as Kino and Hermes are traveling the countryside, and Hermes is like, yeah, those sheep will, like, kill you because they're vicious, evil sheep. Better watch out for them. There's this, like, big, long action sequence and escape scene, and then the two of them falling down in a bed of flowers and laughing it off, and like, what the fuck, man?
Seems just weird, like it wanted to be weird for weirdness' sake.
There's so many tone problems with it, like that. Like, we can't go out on some, oh, this is what we learned about the world sort of thing, because, they're constantly shoving that down your throat in a way that's not meaningful. And then we end on this note that is, like, completely out of place and just so goddamn bonkers. It's like...
Is this the sheep episode, the last episode? Or?
Yes.
Oh, boy.
What an episode to go out on.
Amazing.
I would struggle very, very hard to recommend this to anyone. Like, I would probably recommend the original show, and I haven't watched it!
But you're like, anything is probably better than this.
I thought this show started off, this could be, an interesting sort of, almost an Iyashike sort of show. Nope. Doesn't do that. It goes out of its way to not be that, because it wants to be this, like, self-exploration type thing, but it also wants to be an action show, but it also wants to be none of that at the... Don't watch this show. It's not great.
It really sounds like it can't pull off either of the things it wants to be successfully, and just from the concept alone, it sounds such a wasted potential, and apparently that potential was realized in the light novels. Otherwise, they wouldn't have tried to adapt it for a second time, and apparently they did a good job in the first one, and then decided, okay, now it's time to adapt some of the old stuff, some of the new stuff with new technique, with new animation and everything, and apparently none of the stuff is worth checking out if you've seen the old show. And if you maybe, I don't know if the light novels are available in English even, but if they are, they're probably also a better way to experience the story.
Yeah, it looks like you can buy the light novels in English. There's at least a listing for them on Amazon, so...
There you go. I mean, buy the light novels or watch the old show.
Yeah, the 2017 version of Kino's Journey doesn't really merit watching, to be perfectly honest. Maybe at some point I'll try and go back and watch the old ones so I can maybe, we can have a brief sort of touching on, what it may have done better, because, obviously I don't have my opinion to go on at the moment. I just have, word of mouth from what everyone else has to say, but I wouldn't mind doing a brief revisiting just to say, oh, the original maybe was a little bit better. So as a tentative sort of thing, you can skip over watching the new Kino's Journey.
So from one girl riding a motorcycle through a surreal patchwork of different societies to two girls riding another vehicle through a land turned into a wasteland by world-ending wars. Yeah, when we meet Chito and Yuri, the two main protagonists of Girls' Last Tour, they are riding their trusty Kettencrud, which is kind of a mix between a motorcycle and a tank, and a real thing. I looked it up, and I didn't know it existed before the show. So there you go. Learn something. But yeah, they write that thing and are apparently entrusted with a mission we don't know yet. They have left behind their home and grandpa, who might not have been their real grandpa. I don't think the show ever clarifies that. To travel the almost empty world to a destination unknown. So this series is based on a manga by Tsukumizu. Might be a pen name, probably a pen name, no idea. But they have only done this one manga so far, which wrapped up in January of this year with 6 volumes. So I guess there wasn't much time to start something new, to be fair. But yeah, only that so far. The anime is animated by White Fox, who have worked on stuff like Akamega Kill, The Devil is a Part-Timer, again, that show keeps popping up, and Steins Gate. And the show is directed by Takaharu Ozaki, and this seems to be his first gig as a full director. He has worked on a lot of storyboard stuff, though, and is directing the Persona 5 anime coming up. Looking forward to that one. But yeah, as a first outing, this is a really good-looking and well-directed show. The dead world the girls travel through feels vast and lived in and dead at the same time, which is pretty important considering this is a post-apocalyptic world and story. There are a lot of great shots highlighting the beautiful environments, which also emphasizes how small and alone she and you really are in this world. And the character design of the girls took a bit getting used to for me in the beginning, because it's pretty cartoony. Especially Yu has kind of this blob of color for a face, which was unusual. But the designs really grew on me after a while, and it works really well with the characterization of the girls, who are pretty damn goofy.
Something about the character designs, not all throughout Hidamari's sketch, but it kind of reminds me a little bit of some of the, character artwork used for the designs in like the original manga for that. So I don't know if that's the inspiration they were trying to draw from or not. That it just sort of struck me as being similar, and I was like, oh, okay, sure.
There's also some good use of CG here. I can't believe I get to say that twice in one episode about two different shows. But here we are.
How many times have you said that this season? Holy shit.
Yeah, it's weird. It's like, and like I said, it's the end of the world.
Who are you and what have you done with CC?
Imposter. Yeah, I don't know. It's, like I said, world is coming to an end, not only in this show, but also in real life. But yeah, the CG is mostly used for architecture, machines, and certain shots of the girls riding their Kettenkrat, but it's used pretty sparsely and feels never intrusive. So yeah, I like it when CG is used that way. So yeah, good stuff. Some good decisions were made in that regard in that show. The melancholic atmosphere of the series is also underlined by the great soundtrack from the hands of Kenichiro Suehiro, who also did the music for ReZero, Space Patrol Luluko, and the currently airing How to Keep a Mummy. Yeah, good stuff. Really, really atmospheric stuff. Some really heartwarming tunes that, made emotions well up in my chest. And, it all works really, really well with the atmosphere the show is trying to, and tone the show is trying to establish. So, let's talk about Slice of Life. If you have listened to our show for a while, you know that I'm not the biggest fan of that genre, while John is almost a connoisseur of various slice of life subgenres.
Why are you nosing in on my shtick, man?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. You can have it back soon enough, but
we'll see next season.
I had to take my stab at it with this one because, yeah, it's no secret I prefer plot-driven shows, mostly, and slice of life stuff always needs a certain hook to keep me engaged for the entirety of the show. Hasn't worked for the two slice of life shows, or three slice of life shows, I think, that I started this season. I dropped off all of them, so there you go. It's a tough thing to make happen for me. So, like I said, it needs a hook. For example, the Magic Drenched setting of Flying Witch. I really enjoyed that for some reason because I like the mix of reality with magic. That is just at the corner of your field of view that you can barely grasp. You can't quite see it, and then it's there. Stephen King does that really well in his novels, and I enjoy that too. Just combining real life with this, with some form of surreal or magical aspect, and I think Flying Witch did that really well, and that kept me engaged. Another hook is, for example, the almost painfully relatable protagonist of Watamote, a show I also quote unquote enjoyed, I guess.
Yeah, it's weird to kind of say I enjoyed Watamote when it's when the subject matter is what it is.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, those are the things then that can pull me in, that can keep me engaged from beginning to end if they're well executed. And Girls Last Tour is not an exception from this rule, but since I watched it all the way through, you can already guess where this is going. I would not have been interested in the show if it was just two girls riding their weird tank cycle doing cute things. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of that in the show. But what pulled me immediately into this was the world these girls inhabit. Like I mentioned before, the world in the show feels so much bigger than our protagonists. And even though it's pretty clear how it came to be this way, there's war machinery lying around everywhere. There are destroyed buildings. There are like basically empty, vacant cities. And, okay, we know what happens even before things are clarified. It's like, okay, there were a couple of giant wars, probably some bombs thrown. Almost all of the humans are dead, probably. And this is probably a world at the brink of extinction. So no animals are seen and everything. It's just empty. It's dead. And only some machines are alive and stuff like that. So yeah. So it's pretty clear what this world is and how it came to be. But I still wanted to know more about it and like unearth its deeper mysteries. Thankfully, the show does a very good job of introducing us to this world through the eyes of the main protagonist, through the girl's eyes. Chi and Yu are not really that world savvy. I mean, they know their way around. She is very is like a techie. She knows how to repair the Kettenkrad most of the time, and she can read and everything. And Yu knows how to handle a gun. But since they seem to have spent most of their life with their grandpa, they don't really know a lot of stuff outside of their home and outside of their world. So they stumble a lot of stuff that is unknown to them. A lot of stuff they encounter, they, just like us, encounter for the first time. Certain machinery, certain ruins, certain things. A lot of things that we know the meaning of that they don't, but through them, encountering that and talking about it and exploring it, we also learn about what happened to that specific part of the world. And that was really well pulled off, in my opinion, and makes you really feel or makes you really invested and makes it really easy to get immersed into this universe and this world that the girls live in. We get to learn with them about the history of the world, and it's pretty much never done with the heavy use of exposition dumps, which I really appreciated, because that's always tell instead of show is one of the worst offenders in storytelling in movies. So I'm really glad that this rarely happened. Yeah, we have some characters who spout some exposition here and there, but it's kept to a really to a bare minimum, in my opinion. And yeah, the characters talk a lot and, have some conversations, but it's so rarely about, okay, this happened, and then this happened. That's so, yeah, it's just, the characters talking about what they experience on a daily basis. And, oh, have you seen this? What do you think about that? I don't know what that is and stuff like that. And it's just, it's just interesting and engaging. And we learned that this must be much farther in the future than current day, because, for example, there's a new language seems to have been developed. There are different signs, from usual kanji and everything. She can read, but when she comes across English or normal Japanese, she can't decipher it. There's this new, I don't know, abbreviated form or subverted form of the Japanese language that she can read, but the classic stuff, when they stumble across some really old books, she can't decipher it. She doesn't know what's in it. But since she's a bookworm and she really thinks that books are important because they tell history, and she writes a diary and everything, she just keeps it, and it's hey, this needs to be this needs to survive, and this needs to be kept safe. So yeah, that's pretty cool. Another thing that speaks that tells you how old this world is at this point. The girls don't know what phrases like cheese or cheers mean. The things you say. They at some point they get a camera and they make a photo and they say cheese. I don't know which of them says it first, and then they want to what's that? What does that even mean? Why do you say that? but it's funny. And the same with the cheers thing and everything. There's a really funny episode where they stumble, and heartwarming episode where they stumble across some alcohol. And yeah, of course, you know where this is going. But it's not like silly or like goofy for the sake of being goofy. There's always some, I don't know, it always feels like there's some substance to it, and I don't know, it always feels like it belongs to the story of those girls, and they never seem like they act out of character when they encounter old stuff that they've never come across. So yeah, everything feels like it's set in a distant future. A lot of old machinery, a lot of old buildings, but because a lot of the stuff seems so familiar, that future is still terrifyingly close within grasp. Like, it feels like, okay, if we don't pay attention, if we go on the path that, some people in this world are going, this future is closer than we think, and that is terrifying. And the world plays with that a lot too. The show plays a lot with that too. It builds up. There are a lot of scenes where it builds like a threatening atmosphere, that isn't always paid off. It's like, oh no, here comes danger and everything. It just disappears and vanishes into thin air. But it never feels like a cheap trick or anything, because there is always this underlying sense of danger, because this is a dying world. This is scary. This is what can happen if, things develop in a certain way in our world. And yeah, the tone and the atmosphere in the show is really potent, and I really enjoyed it. There's also a deeper mystery surrounding these many weird-looking statues spread everywhere throughout the world, that the girls come across a lot, which actually gets wrapped up by the end and left me pretty satisfied, so I was really grateful for that. So yeah, there's a bit of plot in here.
Oh.
Go figure. I mean, most of the stuff is, just the girls encountering things and talking about them and checking them out and trying to find out how they work, and, that's happening in each episode, and it's pretty, like I said, episodic, but, there is an underlying threat there. And that also, like I said, builds up to a well-done conclusion and fits perfectly with the tone of the show. So it's basically like the anti-Kino's journey, I guess, in that regard.
I was about to say, everything you're talking about is like the opposite of the show we just talked about.
Yeah.
That sounds good.
Yeah, it's a nice counterpoint. I wanted to end it on something good, and I didn't know if I would, because I have to admit, I just finished up that show today. I watched like the first episode, and had so much other stuff to do, and it was like, oh god, I got a Girls Last Tour. And the more I like postponed this, I was like, oh man, I like the first episode of the show, but there's so much other stuff to watch, and I gotta watch it for the show. And I was like, holy shit. And then I binged it because I really got sucked into it, and I was so happy that I, left the show with such good feelings and so, satisfied.
I sort of hear this show mentioned in the same breath as Made in Abyss and Land of the Lustrous as well. So it's good to hear that, people do think highly of this enough to put it, alongside these other hard hitters from this past season.
It's a lot less plot driven than those other shows. Although, like I mentioned in my Land of the Lustrous review, that is also kind of light on plot, but you get the feeling that they're trying to go somewhere. But I would say Girls Last 2 is the most slice of lifey of those shows. Mm-hmm. Which is not to say it's a bad thing. It's like, that's what it is. And Made in Abyss is definitely the most plot-driven of those shows, and maybe that's why I enjoyed it most, but I also enjoyed those other two shows, so there you go. So yeah, let's talk more about our main protagonists, which are pretty great. Chito is a bit of an introverted pessimist. She's afraid of heights, not super brave, but pretty smart. Yu is kind of the exact opposite. She's an airhead, often dumb, a bit stupid, and a troublemaker, and always hungry. But she is optimistic and carefree, sometimes to a dangerous extent. But yeah, that's a good counterpoint to Chi. And it's very important that the main characters are so likable and sympathetic, because we spent almost the entire series only with them. Girls Last Tour has a very small cast. Very small. Like, it's mostly just those two. And you spend 12 episodes with them. So it's very important that you like these characters. And I did. So, yeah. You know, this is a dead world, and we encounter very few other people in this story. 2 to be exact. Which are great characters by themselves, but don't stick around for more than one episode. So I'm glad the time we spent only with Chito and Yuri never felt annoying or wasted. Now, the other thing I liked about the show, besides the world and the characters, is the tone of the story. And the series, by way of the experiences of the two girls, ask a lot of questions about humanity, what it means to be alive, where we are going, what matters most in life, and especially how to act in the face of, like, pretty much ultimate hopelessness. By all means, the girls traverse a dying world. There's basically nowhere to go but forward. There seems to be nothing left for them at home. You know, there are some flashbacks. You can't really tell what happened to their grandpa, but you can, you know, because there's gunfire in the background, and, you know, you see where this is going and why they had to flee. You know, their grandpa basically wanted to give them, you know, a chance to live, at least for a bit longer. But yeah, there doesn't seem any goal or salvation at the end of their road. The way Chi and Yu react, though, often, you know, very differently to these, you know, their daily adversities and the stuff they discover on the way, is a big draw of the show. And there's this great scene where the girls argue about whether life would be better if you were given clear directions, because they're in a labyrinth and, you know, they come across some arrows that point the way, and they argue, would it be better to have that in life so that you knew where to go, and had a clear goal in mind? And she thinks it would make life better and easier, while you thinks it would be boring, and exploring life by yourself is more worthwhile and exciting. She is, like I mentioned before, a realist or pessimist most of the time, but even she dares to hope, which is important. And Yu even makes, like, this upbeat song that entirely consists of the word hopelessness, or zetsubo, basically taking away the negative meaning of the word and turning it into something positive. Like, she just uses, okay, it's hopeless, but that doesn't mean that we just give up on living. We just, you know, go forward. Being positive and facing the adversities the world throws at you one step at a time seems to be one of the main messages of the show. That counts for the few other characters in the series as well. They try to give meaning to their lives by giving themselves a grand task to achieve, but even when they lose everything, there's always the sense of hope or accomplishment or freedom and satisfaction for trying to escape the sorrow of this barren world. And that was just, I don't know, that felt substantial, and most of that stuff works really well, in my opinion. So yeah, this is a great little show with two very sympathetic protagonists, a beautifully crafted world, and while it doesn't have much plot to speak of, there is enough narrative meat in there to get even more plot-focused people like me hooked. I highly recommend it. Maybe don't binge it, but watch it one episode at a time. The story is told in chapters, and there are multiple chapters in most episodes that lead into each other. The show left me pretty happy and satisfied by the end, like I said. I don't know if there will be a second season, because I don't know if there's any manga material left. But even if there isn't, the ending totally fits with the tone of the rest of the show and doesn't really need any more episodes, in my opinion. Hell, it probably stands better on its own. But yeah, Girls Last Tour, highly recommended. Make no mistake, this is a sad story about the end of the world and the final days of humanity. But it's also an uplifting story about friendship that leaves you with just enough of a glimmer of hope. And that is a wrap on the 47th episode of Anime Brain Freeze. All the music in our show is from the Double Dragon Neon soundtrack by the amazing Jack Kaufman. Please go to vrt.bandcamp.com and check out his awesome work. Our show is available on most of the popular podcast services, but it's always worth visiting animebrainfreeze.com for some interesting articles linked in our episode release posts. Follow us on Twitter at AnyBrainFreeze. We tweet regular updates and fun anime-related stuff there. Leave us comments and questions on Facebook and our YouTube channel, or send an email to animebrainfreeze@gmail.com. We would love to read your feedback. Thanks for tuning in. We hope you had a good time, and please join us again on our next show. Macht's gut.
See you next time, everybody.
Next time on Anime Brain Freeze.
A ray of sunshine, but does this one burn as brightly?
Also, John and I fight each other in a holy grail war.
Brrr.